boils and ghouls. Turn out the lights and keep the popcorn coming, because it's time for another episode of Fright Fights Podcast. Fright Fights Podcast. Get ready for your gore gang. Tyler Cavan, Chris Lax, and Mike McKinney tackling horror news, reviews, and fight for their survival. Coming to you from the Fright Fights Fear Lodge. Get ready to sink your fangs into a battle that will make your blood run cold. This is Fright Fights.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Fright Fights Horror Hangout November edition. In this episode, we're going to be covering all the stuff that we couldn't get to in the original episodes. So without further ado, I'm here with my bud Chris. We are going to talk a little bit about horror. I wanted to start out by saying, what the hell is going on with Best Buy? I'm a physical media collector. You're a physical media collector. We're looking here at the way things are going, and Best Buy had some of the best releases, the most exclusive content. I don't know what we're going to do, because slowly but surely, it seems like physical media is completely slithering out.
They did it to themselves. If you remember back in the day, at least like early 2000s even, you would go to a Best Buy and they would have 5 or 6 aisles dedicated to DVDs and Blu-rays, and they would have every single new release, and they would have it stocked with 5 or 6 of each one of those titles. And they sold. You would go there a lot of times. They'd be sold out like 2 days later if you went back. And eventually it was like, well, we're going to narrow this down to make room for computers or something. They're going to make more room for it. So they put 4 aisles. And then it was like, well, Blu-rays sell more, so let's get rid of all the DVDs. Now we're going to have 3 aisles of just Blu-rays. Okay, 4Ks are out now. We're going to have an aisle of Blu-ray, an aisle of 4Ks. Now we're not going to have 1 aisle. Now we're going to have 1 shelf. Like, it just kept getting lower and lower to make room for everything else, except for what the one thing is that everybody wants them to sell.
Yeah, and I mean, I remember going back there. No, seriously, that's a great rant to have, because it's kind of scary, because, horror fans, we have tons of just different boutique labels, tons of different releases that we want to pick up on the daily. And Best Buy, I mean, they used to have some of that. You used to go in there. I remember I couldn't find on Amazon or anywhere a copy of The Loved Ones from maybe 8-9 years ago. Walk into a Best Buy and they had a copy sitting right there on the shelf. They had some very obscure titles a lot of times. And as they dwindled it down, those obscure titles went away. And then they stopped doing all the cool, boutique label releases that you'd find there. I found some Arrows there before, not anymore. And that kind of brings us to
I don't think physical media is going away. As a matter of fact, I think it's probably going to get bigger and have more releases of more unique films and stuff, and more collections and more box sets. It's just all going to be online based. It's all going to be through Amazon. It's all going to be through whatever company is releasing it, Scream Factory, Vinegar Syndrome, because there is a market. There's a lot of people that really collect especially nowadays, everything's getting all retro and people are wanting, VHS tapes again and cassette tapes for music. It's just all going to be an online base only, in my opinion, which I'm okay with that, because you still get the movies you want. You still get really good deals on some of them for like Black Friday deals. I know Vinegar Syndrome has a release, or Black Friday releases every single year, and you get you can get like 5 or 6 titles for a lower price. And it's something to look forward to, and people take advantage of that. And it's become like an online event almost. So I don't think physical media is going anywhere. I just think the way you get the physical media is going to change within the next 5 or 10 years.
You know where I think it's changing to is boutique labels. I think that we have the mainstream kind of releases are mostly going to digital base, and everybody wants them digitally. And then those boutique movie labels like Vinegar Syndrome, Scream Factory, Arrow, Severin, all of those I feel like are very successful, and they just continue to get bigger and bigger. And I do look forward, just like you, Chris, every single year, those Black Friday sales. I mean, I've been waiting for Cemetery Man to come out for years, and we're finally getting it from Severin on a US release, which is amazing. And I heard that Vinegar Syndrome has some really cool stuff for Black Friday planned too. So I'll be looking at both of those and definitely picking up some stuff for Christmas on my Christmas list because I definitely look forward to it. I love it so much. But I think it's also a bigger thing. And I wanted to kind of get your opinion on it. We both used to work at a movie theater, and we've seen film, especially Marvel movies, how successful they are. And while this is a horror podcast, we're not really here to speculate on Marvel or anything. I looked at the box office scores from this last week. I don't know if you had a chance to check them out yet, but the Marvels was the worst flop of MCU history. And we look at that success coming to an end of Marvel movies because the last 7 or 8 they've made has, not necessarily lost money, but they've fell as much as 70 to 80% in profit. So we see Marvel slowly fizzling out, and horror is starting to go to streaming more. But you have success like Five Nights at Freddy's. Look how good that did. It did twice the number of Marvels. So what does this mean for horror?
Yeah, I think superhero movies are kind of doing what horror films did in the 90s. So you had in the 80s, you had horror movie after horror movie, and that was dominating everything to the point to where it just got tiring to people. Nobody wanted to watch them anymore because there were so many of them to put out there all at once. I mean, in one year, you would have a new Nightmare on Elm Street movie, a new Halloween movie, a new Friday the 13th, new Texas Chainsaw, and it just got too many. And the quality of them obviously got less and less with each one. And then over the years from like 2007 all the way up through, 2019, we had superhero movie after superhero movie after superhero movie to the point to where, and they all tie together. So it's like you can't watch this one unless you go back and watch the other 15 first. And it's too much.
Yeah.
So I think it's at that point where then COVID happened and then they weren't making that many movies. There wasn't hardly anything coming out and nothing was in theaters because theaters shut down. And then all of a sudden theaters were back open. Oh man, we can go out and do something again. What cool. What's happening? What's going to be playing? A horror movie. The first one to come out, Scream 6 or Scream 5, sorry. Scream 5 hit. And everybody wanted to go back to the theater. It was a revival of a horror franchise.
We watched, not to interrupt you, sorry, but that's actually not true because if you remember, we saw a horror masterpiece before that together. It was The Unholy.
Oh God.
That was, I was desperate. So I'm not sidetracked, but I was so desperate to see a horror movie in theaters. I was like, I've been waiting for a new horror movie. Scooby came out in May. I watched it and I was like, that's just not horror enough for me. I need more. So I text Chris. I'm like, the theater has a movie called The Unholy. It literally, they're just throwing it out there. Do you want to go see it? And he's like, hell yeah, I do. We get to the theater and I've never seen anything like that in my entire life. I don't know what the hell that was. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, what I was saying was it's like it's in that same spot where now that everybody can go back to the theaters, they're wanting something to do. And one of the biggest in like returning franchises was Scream 5. So that was a big success. So then all of a sudden you have a big success. What's to follow? Another horror movie, another horror movie, another horror movie. And it seems like that's what everybody's focusing on now is how to revive all these horror films. What else is going to happen? Well, all these other movies that they're making that wasn't successful during COVID or right before COVID, they're slowly getting away with or just doing streaming only because right now the horror market is where all the money is being made. Because you saw releases like Terrifier 2 and then Scream 6 came along. It was just all these films and franchises that didn't need to be there, but they were there because it was the only thing to see pretty much. And everybody wanted to get out and do something. And it just became that thing to do is to go to the theater, watch a horror film. I'm sure eventually, they'll take a break. Then all of a sudden there'll be a big Marvel movie come back out, 5 years later, and it'll be a big success again. It's just everything flows in little gaps. And I think right now horror is kind of like in a high spot and Marvel movies, superhero movies, whatever is kind of dwindling down to that low spot that they are going to stay in for a little bit until all these horror films are unsuccessful. They need something else to rejuvenate the box office again. And some big Hollywood producer is going to make like a combining of like 4 or 5 different superheroes in one film, and boom, you got another success on your hands.
Yeah, I see that too, because like there are those trends, like what's in trend kind of thing. And weirdly enough, horror, the trendy thing lately has been like Catholic and like, different kinds of like Catholic
Well,
priest movies, which no one asked
yeah,
for, but I think it's
but I
interesting.
don't mean to interrupt you, but this
Good.
kind of leads to what they're doing is you're seeing how successful these horror films are. They're bringing that aspect into the Marvel movies now. And I don't know if you've seen it, but they just released the trailer for the Web, the new Spider-Man universe movie.
Yeah, it comes out in May.
Yes, you know what I'm talking about. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. I'm sorry, but there's
You're
like
good.
aspects of Final Destination in it, where it's
Mm,
this woman who keeps seeing like bad accidents happen and she almost dies or does die. And then it repeats, like she wakes up or whatever, and she just had a flash forward of something horrific. And then she has to figure out how to stop it from happening and killing everybody. And it's part of like the Spider-Man universe. And um, I think that's what it's happening is that they're relying on horror to make it popular.
and I do agree with that too, but it's so weird because we have the threat of AI coming out too. We had the writer strike, then we had the actor strike. The WGA was on strike for like what 4 or 5 months now. Just now I think came to an end the first week of this month. So that's great, but I mean, I think that you're absolutely right that we're going to continue to see horror flourish. Which actually leads me to my next point, and I actually watched this the beginning of this month. So, Five Nights at Freddy's. Did you have
I
a
saw
chance
it
to see
too.
it yet?
I did.
Man, that thing was successful. I don't know. Did you watch it at home or just in the theater?
We watched it at home. I have a 7-year-old daughter, and I watched it with her. She really likes the game. She really gets into these type of scary games and everything, and she loves watching other people play these scary games. But so as soon as they announced that there was a movie coming out, she was really looking forward to it. And it was one of the first horror films that she was ever excited about and that she actually wanted to watch. And I was very nervous on to figure out whether or not she was going to sit through it and watch it and not be scared. And she loved it. She loved every second of it. She sat still and she watched the entire thing. She asked questions about it, and at the end of it, she wanted to watch again. And
No way.
there was one moment that was hilarious because she was watching it and she's not a big fan of blood. She doesn't like blood. But there's a scene where one of the characters gets put into a costume and it's like a mask that's like a contraption, like a saw-like contraption that's
Hmm.
closing into the guy's face and like blades are spinning really fast. And it looks like here any second it's going to snap or close and cut the guy's face open. And my daughter kept look like she squished up in a little ball, like she was on the edge of her seat. And she was like, I hope they don't show it. I hope they don't show it. I hope they don't show it. And then she looked over at me and she smiled. She goes, I kind of hope they show it. And then she goes back to watching the movie again. And I felt
Oh,
very proud at that moment. Um, but she really liked it. She was really into it. She knew all the characters and stuff already, so she's very familiar with it. I think that kind of helped her get through it a little bit better. And when the movie was over with, when I kept trying to refer to a scene or a character, she would stop me and be like, "That's the one thing from this one and this one and this one, and this is what he does and this is what he does." And so, I mean, I had a really good time watching it with her and just that special bond and stuff that we had with that. But for a movie altogether, uh, it was very, very lackluster in scares. There was nothing scary to be about it. It was made a lot for young kids. It was like a horror film for young kids, but without the fun. You know what I mean? It was a very serious horror film for a younger audience.
yeah. It was like YA horror at its finest, and it did very successful. And the reason I ask if you watched it in theaters is because I look around and I felt like I was the oldest one in the room. So this is definitely pushing hard to a new generation of horror goers, and it makes you wonder if video game horror is going to become like the next big thing again. They tried it back in the mid aughts, and it semi worked for a while, and I could 100% see him doing that. And I know that Matthew Lillard said he was signed on to 3 films, which I think is going to be interesting to see 3 different Five Nights at Freddy movies. I know like Victoria, like the guard, like the police officer was one of the characters from Five Nights at Freddy's. They had a lot of the YouTubers do cameo appearances throughout. I know a lot of people were mad that Markiplier wasn't in it, which everybody was looking forward to, but he didn't actually show up. The story, I
Don't know
mean,
who those people are.
we can't really criticize it like in terms of the story, even though I had a lot of problems with it. Um, I don't even want to review it. Like I hate reviewing this movie because I will say I had so many problems with it. And while I thought it was interesting, because we have one of those places around our area, it's called Billy Bob's Wonderland, and they have that kind of like animatronic kind of whole setup. It's very vintage Chuck E. Cheese inspired, and I love that about it. And I thought it was a very interesting take on horror to see something like that, especially being modeled after a video game and being this successful. It's the new Marvel, you know. So I don't want to give it a review because when I look around that theater and I saw everybody having such a good time, I was scrolling through TikTok. I see people taking TikToks at the theater and showing people like jumping up and down excited at the mid-credit scenes and really just coming out of their house and, you know, loving this movie collectively, and people were cheering and having such a great time. I don't want to say anything negative about it because at the end of the day, when you have film, that's what it's supposed to do. You could be film is there as an art form to criticize, so of course we're gonna have our fair share of, you know, criticisms for it. But at the end of the day, when you have something as interesting that brings people together in such a communal way, that's what horror is supposed to do. You know what I mean? Like as much as like it's gross out and weird a lot of times, and there's slashers, there's death, there's all this, it brings like fans together to enjoy something communally, which is again what the theater does. So any kind of a
Yeah.
movie for the new generation of YA horror that comes out and is that successful at bringing your daughter, you know, at the age of 7, raising a new generation of people who loves the art of film in general or horror in film. It's great.
Yeah. And we really wanted to go to the theater to see this. She knew when it came out. She kept begging, you know, when are we gonna go? When are we gonna go? And you know, due to her school and her school events and everything, and then me working, it was very hard to find a specific day to do it.
Mhm.
So we knew that it was on Peacock. We knew it was streaming, and we were like, well, what if she doesn't like, you know, what if she's too scared? And I don't want to pay all this money to sit there for 15 minutes and then leave, you know? So I was
Right.
like, we might try this. We might try this at home first. And she loved it. And she started watching more stuff. The other day I came home from work and she was in the bedroom with my wife, and they were watching Interview with the Vampire.
No
And
way.
I was like, how did, and she was liking it. She was asking to watch more. I mean, she made it like 40 minutes into it before it was time to go to sleep. And I mean, I was surprised. It was very awkward because I know some of the stuff that's in that movie, but I was surprised. I didn't know what to say.
I think it's awesome. Again, see, so Five Nights at Freddy's kind of showed her an entire world of horror, and now she's starting to explore more on her own. It's gonna be. I'm telling you, we're gonna see an influx of, you know, like, we're gonna have Minecraft the movie, for example, and people are gonna go to the
As
theater to
long
see it.
as long as they can make horror films and the kids can go see it, I'm excited because for the longest time I was wondering how horror fans are going to get made these days because almost 99% of the people you talk to from the 80s who were born or raised in the 80s and 90s, even the early 2000s, what is the one thing that every single one of them says? We went and rented the video from the video store. We walked around the video store and saw all the covers on the shelves, and that's what intrigued me to pick something out. So we rented the movie, we watched it with our eyes covered. You know, we didn't know what we were getting. We watched all these movies, and then the video stores went away.
Right.
So you couldn't just discover stuff anymore. Like you were on streaming, you have a specific thing you go to the streaming service for. You already know what you want to watch. Very rarely do you scroll through something trying to find a film and just come across something you've never seen and be like, I'll watch that one. Very rarely does that happen. You already know what you want to watch. And I feel like people doing that nowadays, like how do you make a horror film unless somebody's like physically sitting them down and saying, here's what you need to watch, here's what you need to do. but somebody just discovering the stuff by themselves is going to be a lot harder to make a horror film. I mean, for me personally, I never had anybody showing me this stuff. It was me, my mom dropping me off at the video store, me walking around, discovering all this stuff myself, picking out titles that I probably shouldn't have been watching or picking out, taking them home and discovering them that way, you know?
It's the best. And I mean, sadly, no, they won't have that experience. But here's how I can see the future horror fan being made. This is how it's going to be, sadly. But I mean, at least they're into the genre, and the genre is staying alive, and it's doing very well right now. But it's all digital based. It's word of mouth. It's what's their friends watching, what's that thing we saw on TikTok that was recommending. Like, some people post like things about the reactions on TikTok and things like that, and they go out and they want to watch the horror movie because of it. They want to play the game, and they have a horror movie come out from the game, then they're all at the theater. So sadly, they're never going to know what it's like to physically hold media, which sucks. But the one thing we can be hopeful about is the fact that they're able to go and discover these films through friends and still talk about them. So the horror community is still there. It's just changed, which is sad. But at least it exists. You know what I mean? It's kind of like one of those things.
Yeah, at least they have the ability to find these things at their house. Like if they're home by themselves, a 10-year-old or whatever is sat in their bedroom with their TV watching, playing a game or whatever. And all of a sudden they go like, I want to watch something. Let me click on, Max. And all of a sudden there's a featured list there of just added to Max Friday the 13th part 3, just a random horror film. And they're like, what is that? And they just click on it and start watching it. All of a sudden they become a Friday the 13th fan. So it's cool that they could do that, because we didn't obviously have access to that at the time. That was our video stores, But I just think it's very hard because there's so many ways for them to not be able to see this stuff. And we had so many ways to get this stuff as a kid back in the day.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I mean, I do think that it's sad, but it's also great. They have access. It's fantastic. So what all did you think about? I can't give it a review. But before we move on from it, what did you think about Five Nights at Freddy's?
Well, like I was saying, I thought that it was okay. It was very lackluster in scares. It wasn't that interesting. It was just more of like a bland PG-13 horror film. I knew a little bit about the characters because I did play some of the video games with my daughter. So I knew a little bit more about the backstory and stuff that was happening. So I could relate to it a little bit. And I think that's the only saving grace it had as far as me personally. If I would have went into it not knowing anything about it whatsoever, I probably wouldn't have liked it much. But I had a really good time with it though, just because of the experience that it created for me and my daughter.
Exactly, and that's what you're going to look back at, I think, is being able to have that experience with her. That's what a lot of people, I think, is going to see from it too, which is great. So I texted you the other day, and I was excited because I woke up in the morning, and I was about ready to go to school, and right before I left, they were like Terrifier 3 trailer, and I looked out,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh my god, it's Terrifier 3 trailer. Out of nowhere. Have you seen it yet?
I have not watched it because I have not seen Terrifier 2.
Exactly.
So
I was about to say that. You haven't seen the second one. I thought, while I have you here, I want to show you this trailer because I want to have your opinion on this because I fucking love this. I fucking love this. Okay. It's not going to
that
give
probably
away.
means I'm going to fucking hate it.
It's just wait. Let me get this up here. I'm going to pull it up. Boop. And boop. And boop. All right. You seeing that, Chris?
Yes.
All right. We'll commentate over this for you guys at home. If you haven't seen the Terrifier 3 trailer, definitely look it up and watch it because I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Here it is.
I did see that was going to be a Christmas themed horror film, so I like that idea of it.
And that's exactly what I'm excited about for it is it was rumored that it was going to be a Christmas horror film, and the moment that trailer dropped, you see the snowy outside background and the Christmas Carol, and then you see the kid, looking outside for Santa going down the stairs, and I was like, "That's it! It's going to be a Christmas horror film." And I have a point to make
This
about that.
reminds me. This reminds me of like a '80s Silent Night, Deadly Night film.
Right, right. You know what else it reminds me of? The opening scene of Christmas Evil, which I am a huge fan of.
Yep, I already like this trailer.
Right, yeah. I mean, and that's why I wanted to show it for, is because Terrifier comes out and it's like the underdog of horror. It's pretty much super low budget. And then Terrifier 2 has a fan base, and we almost have a brand new kind of horror villain being born. And now we have a Christmas horror movie based off of that, which is insane. And then she screams Santa, and then Art the Clown is dressed like Santa Claus with a fucking axe, Silent Night Deadly Night style. And then the Terrifier 3 logo comes up.
Oh, it even has like a generic like wreath with the Terrifier logo on it. That's
Yeah. Let me tell you, okay, I just want to say I'm not
that's
the
gonna be cool.
biggest, right, right. I'm not the biggest fan of the Terrifier series, but I do want to say that I thought the fact that they're able to think about vintage horror. Like, think about horror, not like super, super old horror, but like horror from the 70s and 80s. What kind of things did it feature? It was then a slasher wave. We had a lot of Christmas horror movies come out as well. There's a Christmas horror movie wave. Then we have like these icons being born, like, we have Ghostface in the 90s, and we have Michael Myers in the 70s, and then we have, all these different kinds of horror villains coming out. Who do we have today? It's kind of like, art is almost following this franchise they're building to kind of homage the 80s. I've never been a fan of it. I've seen films try to do this before. I'm like, I don't really get it because I don't like the way it's trying to do that. But this is the first time I've been able to look at something and say, while I know it's flawed and I don't love the series and I think it's flawed to hell, both films, I do like what they're doing with it. And I think it's exciting to see somebody actually make a franchise horror series that does throw back to the 80s and 90s without trying to copy word for word what they did. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like this makes me want to go and watch part two just so I can get to part three quicker. Like,
And if you do watch part two, let me know what you think, because I have a lot of opinions about that. And I've been holding off because I've been waiting for you to watch it. You need to see it because I really want to talk about it, because I have a lot of things I liked about it and a lot of things I hated about it. There's that. But I'm excited.
yeah,
We have to wait an entire year. It's not coming out
yep.
until next October. You know what I
That'd
thought
be
they were going
crazy
to
to
do? They
release
had
it this year.
Yeah, I thought they were going to do this thing where, so Terrifier 2, they did a re-release for Halloween. So the Terrifier 3 trailer actually premiered attached to Terrifier 2. And I thought it was going to come on and say, surprise, we made this entire movie in secret. Here's the trailer. It's coming out in 2 weeks. It's done. And I was so excited. I
How
was like, they're
crazy
going
would
to
it
release
have
it.
been if you went to watch Terrifier 2 in theaters and they would have just played Terrifier 3?
Yes, yes, yes. Why can't
You
we
know
do
what
that?
you know what I really want people to do, and I wish one company would do this just one time. I want them to make a horror movie, and then they take like, let's say 10 different directors, and they give all 10 directors the same script, and but each one of them gets like a different cast and a different, all this stuff. And they go out with that same script and they make their movie, their version of that script. And then it's all titled the same movie, and they release each individual one separately in certain theaters. So like you might go to this theater and see one movie and go to a different theater and it's a different version, like made by a different director, but it's the same story. Like that would be really cool to do.
They kind of did that with what was that show called? Was it called The Chair? It wasn't Project Greenlight. So Project Greenlight came out, and that was one thing. And then they did something else, and it was that Shane Dawson movie. You remember that? It was not cool. And then Hollywoodland. And they hold on, let me find that's gonna drive me nuts until I find this. Um the Chair, yeah. So what it is it was called The Chair. It came out in 2014. It was on Stars. It was their answer to HBO's Project Greenlight. And they gave two directors with two completely different visions. So they gave Shane Dawson, which is like a YouTube star, and then they gave this one girl who made this like very like indie kind of like small kind of like artsy style, and they gave them the same script, and they said, "You guys go out. We're going to give you your money. It's fully funded. You guys make it." And they came out with two completely different movies. I know Not Cool with Shane Dawson's, and it got booed and everybody hated it. And then Holidaysburg, people were like walking out crying because it touched their heart so much. So it's like so interesting to see how you can have the same script told by two different visions, and one turn out to be fantastic while the other one turned out to be bad. So yeah, I do want to see that happen again because I thought that was so interesting. And it's
So I think it would be cool if they did it that way and there wasn't a full trailer. It would be like a teaser trailer where you don't get to see really any of the actors or anything in it.
mhm.
And so once you go to the theater, you don't know that you've seen a different movie until you start talking to people about it. And you're just like, oh, remember that one scene that wasn't in this movie. What are you talking about? And then it's like all of a sudden you have to go to a different theater to watch another movie again. Like I think it would be really cool.
I mean, yeah, I would. I mean, I would be right there with you. I'd watch that for sure. So Chris, I had something I wanted to bring up too. And this is probably going to take up most of the show for me at least, because I absolutely love this. This is probably my favorite thing I've seen this year. Probably the favorite thing I've ever watched from last year. I mean, this thing, it's the best thing I've seen at least in the last 2 or 3 years. My favorite. It's called Fall of the House of Usher. It's Mike Flanagan. It's on
Hmm.
Netflix. It is
Hmm.
a one of the mini series, so it has 8 episodes, and it's just contained very similar to, in the vein, I guess you would say, of like Haunting of Hill House, Haunting of Bly
Yeah.
Manor, what Midnight Mass, and then he did the Midnight Club, and now he did Fall of the House of Usher. I fucking love all those. I'm here to tell you right now, Fall of the House of Usher was the best of them all. And I love the other ones.
I do want to see it. The only reason I'm holding out on watching it was A, because it was October time when it came out, and I was watching, 31 horror movies. But also is my wife is a big fan of Edgar Allan Poe and all those type of stories. So I can't really watch it without her being mad at me. So I have to wait until she has the time to watch it and we'll watch it together. That's one of the only reasons why I haven't seen it yet. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I've heard nothing but great things.
I want to say that Henry Thomas and Kate Siegel's characters are fantastic. So the setup basically is they have like siblings. Roger Usher, which is your lead, he owns a pharmaceutical company called Fortunato Pharmaceuticals. He built that from the ground up by being very deceptive and very mean and gruesome and like bad spirited in general. His entire family is a family of narcissists, a family that is just bad people in general. They're on drugs, they're drunk all the time, but they have billions of dollars, so they're filthy rich, and they don't care who they have to screw over to get to the top. They will be at the top. That's their kind of attitude. So essentially they start dying one by one, and then the story starts unfolding as each of these characters begin dying. And there's okay, episode 2, and this is might be a small spoiler, Chris. I will not spoil anything else in the series, but I do want to spoil something because my favorite episode is still episode 2 out of all of them. And eight's really good too, but two's my favorite. Um, there's this scene, and the youngest son of Fortunato Pharmaceuticals, Roger Usher's son, he had sex with this like woman on this like yacht whenever he went to some like different country and ended up having this kid, and he basically just wants to fucking party. And he has this dream. He's like, I don't want to do this pharmaceutical stuff all my life. Instead, I want to build this club. And I want this club to be a club where people have to pay $10,000 to get in the door. And I want this club to be extremely exclusive. So what does he do? He takes part of his family fortune and invests it into an old property that they were about to bulldoze to the ground. It belonged to Fortune Pharmaceuticals. He gets in there and they're like, don't do it kind of thing. Like it's a stupid idea. You're gonna screw over the entire family's, the way people perceive them, like their reputation. And he doesn't really listen, and eventually he ends up having this crazy ass like club that he builds inside this building, and he goes through with it. He invites a lot of people, including some of the people that is married to some of the people within the Fortunato Pharmaceutical family. He invites like prolific people outside of Fortunato Pharmaceuticals. They're all there, they're all partying. And he has this thing where he says, at the stroke of midnight, everybody's going to be like having sex with each other. They're going to be all drunk, and we're all going to just party our life away. And at midnight, we're going to make it fucking rain. And that's what he says. And what he means by that is he has a sprinkler system set up, and he's going to have them turn on the sprinklers, and the entire club's going to go crazy. People will start cheering, and they're going to start dancing, and the sprinklers are just going to make the whole place like wet, and people are just going to be like dancing over each other. It'll be a party, right? They get there, things start happening. Midnight comes around. They go to the sprinkler and they're like, do it, make it rain, kind of thing. They pull it. They didn't know this, but Fortunato Pharmaceuticals had actually disposed of acid and harsh chemicals that are extremely, extremely erosive. And they immediately start screaming, and like the lights are strobing and the music's loud, and like it all turns red. And then we get the Poe reference. We look over, and this woman dressed in red, Mask of the Red Death, looks at him and is making her way through, completely unscathed, beautiful, nothing wrong. Everybody else is screaming in pain. You can see their skin. Like it's gruesome. Like you see 100 people and they're screaming for their life in pain. And like you just see their skin searing off and flaking off, and they're just like turning into sludge before your eyes. And then she goes over and like picks up, and she's like, you're a beautiful boy. And then kisses him in the mouth, and right before he like just dies. And then that's like a metaphor, and that's a reference to Poe's Mask of the Red Death. We have references to Cask of Amontillado because they have like different kinds of allusions to that. There's this guy in there that actually is set up to be. So Poe had this guy that he always fought with. He wrote this story, and this guy asked him if he wanted to publish it in this newspaper. And Poe was like, yeah, I'll publish it in your newspaper. That's great. Well, he puts it all the way in the back. This guy does, Poe's work. Then Poe gets the magazine and he looks at it, and he's pissed off because he's like, why the hell would he put my story in the very back? Well, it's because the guy wanted him to read the entire thing so he would review it. So then Poe gets like pissed because this guy put his story all the way in the back. And he's like, will you review my story? Will you review my story? And he's like, yeah, I'll review it. All right. So then he writes this entire like 4-page article about why the book sucked and why no one should buy it. And it completely ruins the guy, like his like entire like kind of career. And then Poe takes a vacation with that book and starts traveling around the world. And he says, hey, you see this book here that has my work in it? And they're like, yeah. And they said, don't read it. It fucking sucks. And like he gets so butthurt. So they have this whole rivalry going on, and they reference it so heavily in The Fall of the House of Usher. What I'm trying to say is this story packs in so many different Poe references and so many different pieces, and it's scary. There's scares that's genuinely terrifying. The story is so well done, so well crafted. The characters are strong. Everything about it is absolute perfection. I gave it a 10 If I could give it higher than a 10, I would give it higher than a 10. I think it's an absolute masterpiece. I think it's horror perfection. It's probably one of the best horror stories that's been told about Poe, period. I don't only recommend it, I will say it will change your life. Like, it is so good. So fucking good. You're muted, Chris, but I know you're speechless. I know.
You know what that's gonna mean, right?
You're gonna love it.
No, it means I'm gonna fucking hate it.
You're gonna love it. I swear. Here's the thing though, give it 2 episodes. Don't make a judgment after the first episode. You just gotta see that second episode. See both and then make the judgment.
Okay. 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 Okay.
So yeah, let's take a little break. And then we're gonna come back here in just a second for the second part. And hopefully Mike will be back from the break then and we can all chat. All right, guys, welcome back to the second half of this hangout episode at Fright Fights Unhinged. Me and Chris are still hanging out here talking a little bit about horror. We have had the chance though to cross Black Friday, so that was a major thing for horror fans because, as we all know, Vinegar Syndrome has a huge Black Friday sale. This year, Severin really popped off with a pretty big Black Friday sale. I ordered from both. Chris, did you order from both?
I did not. I was very limited this go around. This just happened to hit right between like paychecks.
Yeah.
I did pick up a few picks from Vinegar Syndrome, which I like immediately like messaged you like everything that I got, and I was like, I can't believe I spent so much money. But I mean, I picked up mostly the ones that I've just always wanted to see. I got Hell Comes to Frogtown, which is the Roddy Piper cheesy. I think it was like released by Troma originally or something.
I think so.
I picked up the Blu-ray double feature. I think it's a Spanish film. It is Vacation of Terror 1 and Vacation of Terror 2. I don't know anything about them except for them being like, Spanish made films. I picked up the early 80s or mid 80s, I guess, parody. It's one of the first horror parodies, Unmasked Part 25. That's the one that has like the Jason mask on the front of it. But I don't know if what all it parodies, but it's a parody, like a slasher parody. Demon Wind, which is like a cheesy 80s horror film. I always compared Demon Wind to be like an 80s version of Evil Dead, like a late 80s version of the Evil Dead. Like there's so much cheese and stuff, just random stuff that happens throughout that film, and you don't know where the movie's going to take you. It's a lot of fun. I picked that up.
Oh, I love Demon Wind.
Demon Wind's great. I picked up today, actually, I picked up the 4K Blu-ray, 4K / Blu-ray of Return of the Living Dead. I love that movie so much, and I want to see what it looks like on 4K because it's supposedly scanned from the original negative. And as much as I love that film, I think it can look really good, even though the zombies might be just a little bit de-quality with those because of the 4K. But I love the film, and I can't wait to see what it looks like.
And there are some of those Spanish films, like the Vacation of Terror that you mentioned. Vinegar Syndrome has put out some of those Spanish-made horror films in the past, and I've picked some of them up, and they're a lot of fun. Honestly, I've had really good luck because you never know. Like sometimes when Vinegar Syndrome releases something, you're like, "What the hell is this?" You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I've never heard of this film. It's never been released before. It's only been on VHS, and I've never got the VHS because it's like $200. So your choice is to pick it up blindly. Yeah. And what I love about it is that like you can discover so much stuff. And honestly, I had a huge gap in Spanish horror, and I've had nothing but positive to say. What is it? Cemetery of Terror? Was that the one? I absolutely loved, and you would like that a lot, Chris. I would highly recommend checking
That's
that.
the same guy. That's the same guy who did the oh my gosh, what was it called? It was about the witch board. The little kid, he wears like the dinosaur pajamas, and he has the witch board that brings up like the demon ghost things.
Oh shit!
The fuck is that movie?
I forgot the movie too. Oh no. Let's look this
Oh,
up
it's
because
the
I
same
it's
guy.
driving me
The
nuts.
same guy who did it. Yeah, the same guy who made that movie also made Cemetery of Terror.
Let's look. How fast can I type here? Here it is. Oh shit, the guy does not have a page. Let me try this one.
He's a Spanish filmmaker.
All right. Oh man, he has a huge television career. It looks like from the early 90s. Damn, it's not on. I cannot find that. If anybody knows, let us know because we'll probably fit Grave Robbers,
Here,
Don't
I'll
Panic,
Google it real quick.
Cemetery of Terror.
Don't Panic. That's it. It's Don't Panic.
Is it Don't Panic?
Yep, it's Don't Panic. Yeah, I picked that up from Vinegar Syndrome like last year during Black Friday. But I also picked up a Christmas horror film called Don't Open Till Christmas,
Mm-hmm.
and also one of the first, if not only, like sports horror films with fatal games, like a sports slasher movie.
Well, that's actually interesting because I picked that up too, and I'm really excited to see it. I also got I'm a huge David Cronenberg fan. So I'm not a big fan of the movie because I've only seen it one time and its existence. Never really cared for it, but
I
I did pick it up.
I see. I really love Existence, um, and I think it's one of my favorite Cronenberg films. Like I think it is. I think it's my favorite Cronenberg film.
Really?
And I really, really wanted to pick it up, but it was just too much. I couldn't pay $50 for one title. I just could not do it.
Well, I mean, maybe I need to maybe do for a rewatch then if you loved it and it seems like it's extremely popular. So maybe it was just my viewing, but I did not have fun with it the very first time. But I did. So here's what I picked up. I picked up that. I picked up Fatal Games, and I don't have my order in front of me here, but I remember what else did I get? And I know that Existence was a very it's like one of those like big box sets almost. So it was more, and I think it is loaded with just tons of bonus features. I know the scan looks really good on it too, apparently. But aside from that, did I get the hold on? There's one more I got. Oh yeah, the Vinegar Syndrome
You got
Lost
the
Picture
Lost
Show.
Film Collection.
Yes, thank you. Shoo. It has 10 movies in it, and it celebrates their kind of genre of Vinegar Syndrome from the past 10 years. So they had like one per year that they've been in business as a company. So I'm really excited to see those. I don't think I've seen any of the films on there. So I'm really excited to check that out, and I know that's going to be a box set that you're definitely going to discover a lot of different things on. That's just not been available before. I've looked up some of these movies, and they are not very well known. So there's that. Um, I do want to say I went to Severn and I picked up one of my favorites. I know you don't like this one too much, but De La Morte de la Mort, which is Cemetery Man. It was very expensive. But I mean, I had to because it's been so long. It's only been available like on a German Blu-ray. Any other way you can get it's like a bootleg in America or like a region free player.
Well, I have a DVD of it somewhere. I had the original DVD that was released. I think it was an Anchor Bay release.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Very
when it came out
expensive.
back in like early to mid 2000s. And I was not a fan of this movie. It's one of those movies too where it feels like a dream. Like the entire movie is very dreamlike. You know how like Phantasm, you just
Yeah,
watch the whole movie and it feels like you just had a really weird dream.
yeah.
It's the same thing. It has that weird quality to it, but I don't know. It was just I never really could get into it. It was a little boring and a little slow to me. Just nothing that I really liked. I mean, obviously it's been a long time since I've seen it, so maybe a rewatching needs to happen, but I didn't care for it.
Well, you know how I feel about Phantasm. I love Phantasm, and I think you like Phantasm more than this, right? Though. Um,
Oh yeah.
but the thing is like if we look at Dylan Moore. I think the big thing is it's not really had a massive release. I think it's been like one of those things. It's more just regional releases. So I'm wondering how this is going to look compared to what it was, because I know like the scan was done brand new this year. So I'm really excited to check it out. I had a splurge on it because it was very expensive. There was more movies, but I already got them from Code Red. So they put out like The Church, The Sect, all those. I didn't bother to get those because I just got them on Blu-ray like 2 or 3 years ago. Didn't want to double dip. They're to the point where they're just kind of re-releasing shit at this point. But I mean, if you had not gotten that movie, yes, that's the copy I had. Yeah, yeah. It's it goes for a lot. Chris is holding up a copy of Cemetery Man, and it's the original Anchor Bay Blu-ray. I think not Blu-ray, but DVD. And I think it went for quite a bit of money before this one came out, which this one came for quite a bit of money when it's in print. So
Yeah,
one way or another.
I usually keep every DVD I have until I upgrade, and I just haven't had a chance to upgrade it yet because I didn't even really care for the movie. But I mean, maybe I need, like I said, I need to rewatch it. Sorry for backtracking.
No, you're good because I mean it's something that I think that it's not gotten a proper release, just the DVD. So I'm curious to see, how it is. I mean, I love it. I'm not trying to say that. You know what I'm trying to say. You pick up what I'm putting down. But they also had the Church, the Sect, Spider Labyrinth, Closed Circuit, Raiders of the Living Dead, which looked absolutely terrible. I thought about picking it up because it's like $25, and I was like, this is a good opportunity to just grab it blindly. It does not look good.
It sounds like an older film, but when I started looking at it, it seems to be a newer made film, and I was like, I don't know. I can't get myself to buy it.
They've been doing that lately, Severn has. Um, Taking like newer, like 2013, 2015, 2018, whatever year films, and they've been putting them back out again and restoring them. Because I guess a lot of times that these films don't get proper Blu-ray releases, and it's their way of kind of just being discovered for the first time. But it did not look good. Did not pick it up. I did pick up something that's non-horror from Severn, but still genre. Um, so I won't mention that, but I mean, I shop around, and I've gotten tons of stuff from Criterion, from the Barnes and Noble sale that was a big Black Friday, and anybody who likes Criterion movies knows. I think Criterion has released some horror, so I mean, definitely stock up on horror. There's House, which is a really good one on there, and it's a sale you just don't want to miss. It's every single year. They do it in November, and it's Criterion on Barnes and Noble, and you can get the Blu-rays for like less than $20, and it's great, and they're always great transfers too. So it was successful shopping. Did you pick up anything else on Black Friday? I think there was a couple more deals going on, but I didn't shop besides what I just said.
Yeah, no, I was very sparing this year. Like I said, I picked up those 6 titles for Vinegar Syndrome, and then I picked up the Blu-ray 4K of Return of the Living Dead. That's all that I got this year for Black Friday.
Same. It was a very quiet year for me too. And usually I pick up a lot more. But I mean, the thing is like a lot of these things are just getting re-released, so it's always tough. But the one thing I always look forward to about these shows, Chris, we haven't had a chance to do this month, is talk a little bit about the worst films in your book that we were doing. Remember? So do you want to move on to that?
Yes,
Because like I last time I got
yes,
so pissed off and so mad that I just cannot wait to hear the next five.
yes. So I wanted to refresh the listeners from the last time we did this. I found a magazine that was called Horror: The Ultimate Celebration, and it is done by SFX and Total Film Magazine, and they combined a list of the top 50 worst horror films of all time. I mean, that's a pretty bold statement right there. Top 50 of all time. And we went through the first five, so like 50 through 46. And we gave our thoughts on those. So we're going to start again and go 45 through 41 and give our thoughts on these. And eventually throughout the episodes, we will get down to the final top five films of all time that are considered the worst. So what do you think about this, Tyler? At number 45 from 2007, the remake to The Hitcher.
I love The Hitcher. The remake was not that bad. It wasn't good. I'm not going to argue with it not being on the list. I don't think it was the top 50 worst films by any means.
No, no, by no means was it that bad at all. I thought it was actually a pretty fun movie. As remakes go, I thought it was pretty good. This came out right a few years after like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake from oh man,
'03,
what's the company?
right?
2007 is when The Hitcher came out.
No, we were talking about the
Um,
2003 Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right?
oh, yes, 2003. It was done by the production company. Oh my gosh,
I'm blanking on.
Fox.
I don't know which one
I'm
it is.
sorry. There's a production company that did like the Friday the 13th movie, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, the Hitcher.
I think I know what it is, but I don't want to say it. Let me double check it real quick because I don't want to tell the
Oh my God,
listeners.
it's literally like right here in front of me. Hey, let me find the Hitcher. I have it literally. I've just been staring at it here recently. Here it is. Um,
Rogue,
from
Rogue, right? Or Platinum Dunes.
Platinum Dunes. There we go. All right. So yeah, Platinum Dunes put out a bunch of remakes like back to back to back to back to back. Out of all of those, I thought that this was one of the topper of the remakes. I actually enjoyed the Hitcher remake.
Was the Hills Have Eyes on that list too? Hills Have Eyes.
Yes. Yeah, Hills Have Eyes. Um, Hills Have Eyes, Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Hitcher. Um, I think they might have did The Fog. I can't remember if they did The Fog or not. But there was a bunch of films that Platinum Dunes did,
It was like their
and
response to what is it? The people who did House of Wax. Why am I blanking on this? That really big company making higher budget horror films, and they were trying to what you know what I'm talking
Ghost
about?
House.
Ghost
Like,
House.
yeah, Ghost House Pictures or Ghost House Films.
Yeah. It was kind of like their answer to that.
Moving on. So number 44 of the worst horror films of all time from 2008, Shark in Venice. I have never seen it. Know nothing about it. It says it
I've never seen it
says
either.
rising sea temperatures bring a hungry great white shark to the canals of Venice. I'm assuming it's one of those like made for sci-fi channel type films.
I don't know the way the title sounds. It's like Shark in Venice. Is that what it's called? Um,
Yeah.
it reminds me of like those like love stories. It's like a shark in Venice. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I'm going to Venice. I'm finding myself. I'm finding my lover. So the shark like just travels to Venice to meet somebody, and then just like gets pissed off about the breakup and just starts wreaking havoc throughout Venice. I think it's fucking genius. Honestly, I mean, I can't attest that it should be on there, shouldn't be on there, but at the end of the day, it's called Shark in Venice. So I think we could probably picture how bad that would be.
Yeah, exactly. Number 43 from 2009, The Unborn. And I agree
I
wholeheartedly with this movie. I hated this film.
I did
One of
too.
the worst movies I'd ever seen in theaters. I remember
One of the
specifically,
worst. You think it was? I mean, I kind of get that. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I get that.
I remember sitting in the theater watching it, and there's a scene where like the priest grabs this really long like shell and blows into it to like toward this goat. Like I can't remember exactly what it
I
was,
know
but
what you're talking
this
about.
weird goat, and he's blowing into this longhorn, and I'm in the middle of this theater, and I just remember like I could not resist. I screamed out, and I went Ricola, and everybody started dying laughing at that scene, and that's like the only thing I remember about this movie besides it being one of the worst things that I've ever watched.
Well, that was bad, yeah. But at the same time, one of the worst parts of the film for me was the weird like Holocaust undertones that it had. There were moments that was just like, wow, the twins, they experimented with their eye colors, and this was in the Holocaust, the Holocaust. So I'm like, what is, I don't understand the backstory of why we have to bring a Holocaust background into these characters. And it kind of went south from there when they were like, oh, Jumpy wants to be born now, kind of thing. It's just like, why? It's like,
Yes,
well,
the
your twin got
Jumby. Like
yeah,
I couldn't even stand that the guy's
yeah.
name or the kid's name was Jumby. Like I was just pissed off immediately as soon as they told the kid's name.
And it was poorly done. They were kind of, it was sloppy. It was all over the place. Like like a couple scenes was, there were some redeemable moments like a few times throughout that was like, this had potential. You could look at it like read the premise. Like don't watch the movie, don't look at anything about it. Read the premise. On paper it seems like it could work, right? But when it actually gets translated to the screen, it's probably, I think, obviously it's the 43rd worst film of all time.
Yep. So moving on to number 42. This one actually makes me a little mad. It is from 1972, Night of the Lepus. And I do not agree with it being on this list. This is the giant killer bunny film from 1972. And I remember watching this. It was a made for TV film. I remember watching it growing up. I was really, really intrigued by how they did the special effects with the giant rabbits, where they used miniature sets. They used a lot. It's real rabbits back then, So they used a lot of miniatures and everything. I really liked it. I thought it was a really fun movie. I thought it was really cool to see. And I don't agree that that should be on a top worst list.
No, I'm right there with it. I think it's because the lower budget aspect to it is, it's probably the visuals. They're like, oh well, it's not a good quality, and that's why we don't like it. But that's something that's not necessarily tied to the narrative of a film, and I think it's stupid to say, hey, we're gonna say this is one of the worst films of all time because we didn't like the quality of it. And it's very apparent that's what it was. So I mean, I don't think it belongs on that list either at that moment, or at that point, I should say. One of the West got so mad and angry and made Chris mad. There he is.
Did you get that?
No, you completely froze, and I was like, oh, well, that done pissed him off. That threw him over the edge. The
Oh.
list made him leave.
All right, I'll repeat this. All right, so the last one on the list here for today, the number 41 of worst movies of all time, according to this magazine, from 2008, Zombie Strippers.
I have not seen it.
I have not seen it either. I know nothing about it.
I mean,
I
it
don't know
sounds like
who's
it
in
could
it. I
be
don't
one of
know.
those. That's pretty bad. So, I mean, that has that going for it. How does the poster look like? Super Sci-Fi Channel original movie or Asylum movie?
It looks like it could be an asylum film, yeah, something like that. I know it's not because I think I've seen the DVD and stuff out, but it just looks like that type of quality, just very low
Mm.
budget. Like I said, I don't know much about it.
There was this weird run
Yeah,
from
there we
the
go.
mid-aughts, like from like 2005, 6 to like 2011, 12, like a 6 or 7 year period. And I don't know if you remember this, Chris, but it was back whenever like American Pie was putting out their straight to video titles, and like I know like Asylum was putting out their straight to video titles. Who else was it? There was several other like studios was putting out straight to video titles, and they had also like the After Dark Horror Fest putting out titles, which some of those were fun. But from like 2005 to 2011, that period there, we just get thousands of like direct to video titles that were horrible. There were like some fun ones. Like I loved some of the After Dark Horror Fest straight to video releases were great. But whenever you see like 2008 straight to video, you kind of know what you're getting into. That's what I'm trying to say
Yeah.
with them.
But moving on a little bit, since we got past the worst movies, let's talk some good movies.
Yeah.
I got the chance to check out Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
Thanksgiving. And this by far is Eli Roth's best movie.
No
I don't
way.
like anything else that he's done. I I'm not going to give spoilers or anything, but I really, really like this movie. It was so much fun. It's a throwback to 80s horror film in the most truest fashion. He takes everything serious. It is really funny. It's a lot of fun. It's really gory and violent. There's a lot of deaths in it, and he did it very well. Where you know how they would have like every few minutes in horror films, there's supposed to be a death scene or something like that in there. He
Right.
spaces out those scenes really well. It seems like every few minutes, like every 5 minutes, there's a death scene that occurs, and it's very violent, very gory. The killer is unique, but it's not like iconic look for a killer, but it's definitely different. And you could tell that they've run out of ideas for like masks and stuff like that. You can't really get an iconic look that much these days, so it doesn't really fit the iconic status. But um, excuse me, it was a lot of fun. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Took the idea of Thanksgiving, the holiday itself, and idolized it at its highest. Like they use tools and stuff that you're like the utensils and stuff that you would use for Thanksgiving dinners. Like there's a scene with the corn cobs, like the little sticks that you stick
Like
in the end of
the
corn cobs.
holders.
Yeah, there's that. Like stuff with like basting a turkey is utilized or utilized in here. Um,
Dude, that
so
sounds like
much stuff that goes
everything that
into
we
it.
would want it to be, honestly.
It was everything that I wanted it to be. The only thing is, I told you before in a previous episode that I wish there was a lot of violence and gore and a lot of nudity. It had everything in there except for the nudity. There was no nudity in the movie at all.
Yeah.
But it did not take away from the movie. It was a lot of fun. Um, I highly recommend it. It lived up to the expectation. I went into it thinking I was going to not like it just because I don't like a lot of Eli Roth's films,
Mhm.
but it surpassed everything and I really loved it. And there's news that just came out as well. Thanksgiving 2 will be out in 2025.
And I think that that's in direct response to the fact that this was very successful. I mean, I don't think they spent a whole lot of money on it, but the opening weekend was solid, and the second weekend was even better because it was around like that, what was like the Thanksgiving 4-day weekend, the Thursday through Sunday, and it knocked it out. Like
Yeah.
it was like second or third place against some of the biggest films. Now, I know, Chris, you were saying that you were worried going into this with thinking about like, is it gonna be gritty? Does it have that kind of like throwback grindhouse drive-in kind of quality to it that we kind of was expecting? Did it have any of that, or was it made very slick?
Well, it is slick in a style like you can tell like it's filmed really nicely,
Mhm.
but it has a weird quality to it because it feels like those old 90s slasher movies. It feels like a I Know What You Did Last Summer, urban legend, stuff like that. It has that feel to it. I don't know if it's the quality of film that they used or if it's just the style of filmmaking he used, but it definitely had a very retro, not 80s, I'm saying. It felt like a 90s slasher film. And it was all nice. Like it flowed really well. It just brought you back into that style of filmmaking, and I was really really impressed.
Dude, I mean, you've sold me. I was really wanting to see it before and it was on my list, but now I like immediately want to see it because I have a love hate with Eli Roth as well. I think that his films, he's made some like okay ones, but for the most part, they do fall pretty flat. They always have that potential, and by the end of it, it loses that momentum. But I think Thanksgiving seems like, it's kind of a gimmick movie, but at the end of the day, it seemed like it was going to be fucking fun. How often do we have a Thanksgiving based horror film that comes out in theaters, especially like fucking theaters? It's crazy.
Yeah.
Even this has been in development hell for like what, over a decade. So now we actually have it out and it's doing well. It's crazy. This could be like an entire franchise. And you're saying it's great. The reviews are great. It's making money. I mean, fuck, I need to go see. I need to go see this right now.
And I hate to speak on Mike's part, but I did get a chance to talk to Mike about it after he watched it,
Yeah,
and he really liked it as well. He basically had the same thoughts I did. He felt the same way about it, how it was fun. But I don't want to speak on his part, so I'll let him talk about it next time he's available to chat. But I know that both of us really liked it.
sweet, sweet. Well, I had to, speaking of films that we kind of like, maybe like directors or films that we've lost respect for over the years. Saw, the franchise itself, I have a love-hate relationship with. And I finally got to see Saw 10, and I was going in with the lowest, tiniest little morsel of, positivity I possibly could. Because let's recap here. I like Saw. Saw 2 was good, not great, but it was okay. Saw 3, good, not great, it was okay. Saw 4, not so good. Next to bad, but not, I'm gonna say it was like absolutely horrible, but it was not good. Saw 5, fucking atrocious. I hate that film with everything in me. Saw 6, good, not great. It was fine. I mean, it was kind of getting exhaustive at that point. Saw 7, what the fuck was up with the pink blood? Why was the ending like that? Why the whole thing was an absolute fucking catastrophe. Then we have your Spiral and Jigsaw. Spiral, horrible. Fucking horrible. Jigsaw, even worse. So whenever you have a film that says like, Saw 10, it's not a spinoff, it's not a prequel, it's not a sequel, but they pulled a Halloween. So this one takes place after the events of Saw, leading into Saw 2. All the original cast is back, which is a plus because it's been like, since the physical original cast has been together, it's been over 11-12 years at this point. So the fact that everybody's still, I mean, fuck, the fact Tobin Bell's still alive and working is a miracle at the very least. And he's like in his 80s now at this point, playing Jigsaw, which is even more scary now because as he's aging, his character kind of has this more sinister kind of appearance. And it kind of got costumey in the earlier films too. But that's kind of like what we love about it. And this one, they said they wanted to throw back to the originals. Like they wanted it to look like Saw, Saw 2, Saw 3, that trilogy there had a very specific look to it. And it did. I mean, the lighting, that they crushed the yellows, they went, they had a very deep contrast. It felt very reminiscent of Saw 2, Saw 3, maybe some Saw 4. But we basically have a story here that goes to where he gets cheated. John Kramer does. And have you seen this yet, Chris?
I have not seen it yet.
I don't want to spoil too much of it, but I will say we see him get cheated. He is told that they have a miraculous cure to his cancer that later kills him in the third movie, and they're able to treat it. So he travels to Mexico, pays out his life savings, goes through all these clinical trials to make sure that the operation is going to be effective. Well, then they learn that,
I think that's hinted at in one of the movies in the franchise. I can't remember which one it is, but they hint at that where he had the cancer and it was something went wrong, something was done wrong, and ultimately he died from it. So, did die from it.
Well, yeah, that's like the premise of like John Kramer too, is just like the fact that like, hey, we're taking somebody who had a life, they fucked it up, so therefore I'm going to put them through a series of tests to see if they're worthy because I'm not going to have that chance because I was done wrong. It's kind of like the whole, you know what I mean? Like that's like from the first Saw movie, even it kind of had that like, hey, don't fuck with me because I've been fucked with, like kind of mentality. You know what I mean? And sorry, my cat's over here acting weird. Anyway, back to the film. He gets there, they do the procedure, quote unquote. He wakes up, and what they do is they show him like, hey, this is how we did the procedure, this is what we did. And they show him a video of it. Well, he's so overjoyed the fact that his cancer's been cured. I'll just fast forward here. He goes home, but right before he leaves, he mentions to this nurse that's taking care of him at the facility. And keep in mind this facility is like very under wraps. Like they don't want anybody to find out about it. But he eventually goes back to thank everybody for their service or whatever. He gets like a I don't know, like a champagne or like a wine to bring back that they talk about. And he leaves it there. And as he's leaving it, he notices everybody's gone. And he's like, "What's going on?" So he goes to like the operating area that they showed him, and he goes through the entire thing looking for somebody, yelling for the nurse. They're gone. The place is completely shut down. And then he realizes there's a videotape they put in of brain surgery, like a brain surgery medical kind of thing that they would show like in medical schools. And essentially they were just playing that to make him seem like he was like partially because they said like, oh, we have to keep you partially conscious to make sure your brain's firing the correct neurons and stuff. So what he was watching was technically a video they would show in medical schools that wasn't even doing any kind of procedure on him. They were faking the entire thing. It was a sham. So he gets angry, and we have this fantastic, I mean, this is extremely, we talk about sympathetic villains, and there's been sympathetic villains throughout, and one that you kind of feel for no matter what. And he's wicked, yeah, he's wrong for doing it, but at the end of the day, we kind of feel for John Kramer. He had an entire life, and the fact that they weren't able to help him, you kind of just feel bad the guy's about to die. And he's like, well, throughout the entire series, you have this lingering, yeah, he's kind of a horrible fucking guy. And does he deserve like to like be locked up or like be put to death? Maybe. But you can kind of feel for him because he's almost dead or he's already dead. And this really plays to that. And this really plays to the fact that these traps that he creates for the people who wronged him is winnable. Like they're possible. And if you remember back in the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh film, the traps every time, and I don't blame them for this because I understand when it comes down to making a film how hard it is to progressively up the stakes. Like every film you make year after year, it's like, okay, what can we do better? How can we outdo ourselves from the last one? Well, this one, they really outdid themselves because they said, we're not going to look at any of the past films. We're going to go back to the very first one and we're going to strip it back and we're going to make these traps possible. So he gets them all together, all the people from that sham, chains them up. There's a lot. I'm not going to give away any kind of like specific details, but we have crazy ass death scenes. I mean, there's one where he like lifts up the person he bought the wine for, which was his nurse, and with chains, and they have this like CAT scan machine which puts out crazy ass radiation, and they turn it up as high as it can go, and they like reflect it to where like it reflects directly on her and starts burning her from the inside out. And they're like, please help me. And she's like, they're trying to like help her from the ground. And eventually they cut like one chain loose to where she falls out of the thing. And then the whole machine kind of comes down and continues to like fry her from the inside out. It's crazy stuff. But they're winnable. And that's what makes them so interesting. There's some twists. There's always that Saw twist. There's just, I mean, I really enjoyed it. It's all I can say about it without, I don't want to give away this ending. I don't want to give away all the traps because they're all very interesting. There's a lot of really good characterization that plays into it. It's a homage to the original, but it's done so much I can't say it's better than it's hard to say that, but this is right up with the original. Like, I'm telling you, this is the best Saw movie they've ever made. It's better than the first. It's better than the second. It's better than any of the other films. This is truly my favorite Saw movie they've ever made. And I don't think they could ever do it again. I really don't. After this one, I mean, where do you go? You can't go anywhere with it. I mean, this is the complete series. You get that backstory to Kramer even more. You know how he feels inside. You know his prerogative and what he really wants for these victims. You get those answers. You see tons of like backstory to Kramer as well. And you see how these traps really work. And I think that's what makes this interesting enough. So I mean, I'm just telling you, I'm gonna rate it. I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. And yeah, that's not a 10, but for me, Saw, like the first Saw movie, it's also an 8 out of 10. That's as high as the Saw series goes because I don't love the series. I do really like some of them. Like I think that Saw through Saw 3, if you're gonna like tell somebody like, hey, you need to watch some Saw movies, if you just tell them to watch that trilogy, they've really got everything they need. They don't really need any more than that. But now I'm gonna say you really need to watch Saw 10 and then watch Saw 2 and 3. I think it's very important to the series. I think it's fantastic. I think that it's going to be remembered as probably one of the best, if not the best Saw movie. I think a lot of people feel the same way about it. Please don't make another one, though. Please don't make another one. This is, I'm telling you, this has to be the last one. This is good.
I'll watch it. I'll watch it eventually. It's the only one I haven't seen, so.
For sure. So, yeah, man, I wanted to highlight that. Man, do you have any more movies you've watched those last couple of weeks? Because it's been absolutely crazy with the holidays. But let me tell you, we have been shopping. We've been shopping for horror. And I think next month we are going to be watching them left and right when they come in. So I guess what we'll do is we're going to wrap up for this month's hangout. A little unhinged action for you. Of course, we're going to be back next month. We're going to have more episodes. We're going to have more battles, more stakes, more fun. Definitely reach out to us on Twitter. We are on Slasher App. Sure, I almost forgot what we had for a minute. We are on the Facebook group. We love talking horror with you guys. Chris, you want to say anything else before we go?
We can go ahead and tell them what our next topic is going to be. So
yeah.
After this episode, our next topic for the battle is going to be Christmas horror films. So that'll be a lot of fun. We got a bunch of movies picked out for us, and I cannot wait for us to get started on those because I love a good Christmas horror film.
Hell yeah. 'Tis the season, and we have a surprise guest, so stay tuned because we will be revealing that on that episode that should be dropping very close to Christmas time. So without further ado, we will see you guys later. We love you. Peace out.